for me, I think the biggest thing that people don't understand is the numbness that comes with it. You know what I mean? Especially when the physical side of it hits you and it becomes that slog, that almost impossible slog to just be alive or to be human, you
Yeah.
know? It's something that you just can't describe to people unless they've been in it. And yeah, obviously there are people who have had bouts of depression but don't have the manic depression, who can kind of understand it because of the emptiness that kind of goes once the void hits. So they can kind of empathize in a weird way. But anyone who's never really kind of felt that, it's really difficult to try and get them to see why it's so difficult to just get through life, you know? Like it's almost like replacing your body with a mannequin's body and just having to be very plastic and everything's so deliberate and everything's so heavy, you know?
I call it a lead blanket.
Yes. Yeah.
It's my lead blanket. Yeah.
I call it trying to run underwater.
Exactly the same
You know what I
thing.
mean?
Yeah, dude.
It's absolutely,
It's
yeah.
not- yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that really is the hardest to really get people to understand and to empathize. And luckily, you know, I'm now in a relationship that gets it. You know, I'm surrounded by people who get it, and I think that's a real key because you don't have to necessarily understand it sometimes, but to empathize and go, okay, how can I help? How
Yeah.
can I make this easier? You know, I've seen it with that. I've seen it with, you know, a lot of the families who I work with who, you know, deal with PTSD and whatnot. It's getting that communication to hit. I don't need you to save me. I just need you to be there if I start to fall backwards and just give me a little push.
This is an experience of the void.
My role here on earth is to fucking be myself, squeeze the shit out, like all the juices, all the life juices out of what's given to me, and be fucking honest, at least with myself.
I know you've talked about depression and anxiety and stuff. How do you lift yourself out of depression and talk yourself out of anxiety? Because I've read that you said it's your voice of reason, that you're finding that voice of reason.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
my personal voice of reason, and this is something that has kind of broken it open for me, and it's going to sound a little simplistic, but it's very important. I have rediscovered the reason why I am into art, into music, why it chose me and not the other way around. It's very important for us to remember that our first language is not English, it's not Australian, it's not, you know, Irish, it's everything that we have learned.
I'm very fluent in Australian, though.
Well,
yeah.
yes, that's true. But you know what I'm saying? What we are trying to do through art is trying to translate our first language, which is magic. You know, we are all born with this amazing gift. Everybody is born with something that is not of this world. And once you realize that you have to lead with that, and everything that this world has to offer, all of the crap that is put on us, whether it's something that passed down from our parents, whether it's something that was because of our human existence in our brain, whether it's the world putting its weight on us, that is not an us problem, that is a them problem. And so what we really need to come down to is the core that we are all born with this power. And this power knows no God. It has no conscience. It doesn't matter whether it's good or evil. It's how you direct it. How are you going to wield this weapon? So you have to almost make this choice to trust that, you know what? All of the hard shit that we've had to go through, the universe has not taken us out yet. And so you kind of have to trust that first language. And for me, it is so healing to get into some type of art. That is how you bridge the gap between the earthly pleasures, which is drinking, smoking, drugs, all these things that we're trying to like numb everything. But what we don't realize is that by doing that, you don't just numb the bad feelings, you're numbing the magic, you're numbing the good feelings. So immersing yourself in, I don't care if it's finger painting, I don't care if it's photography, I don't care if it's just, hey, I'm gonna look at that tree and write down all of the colors I see. I don't care what it is. You have to find that little separation from this world. And then you get to call that power yours. And that is something that no one can take away from you. And it will literally scrape you off that bottom when you need it to.
You've been in a few quite, I don't know, like aggressive worlds. Like you grew up in gang life. You've lived in hip hop for a long time. There's a lot of aggression about it. Do you think people feel comfortable saying they're struggling in those? Yeah, like in gang life, were you allowed to say I'm having a tough time?
I mean, traditionally, no. I
Yeah.
mean, like you're expected to keep that shit to yourself and just soldier out and get over it, get through it. But that that doesn't work, and it just creates bigger problems.
Totally.
And I realized that later, because coming from that world and coming into music and whatnot, if I had a problem, I didn't know necessarily how to convey it to someone, and I would hold it in and let that problem fester, and then I'd have this anger built up inside of me, and I trying to figure out how do I get past this, or how do I get rid of this anger, or whatever it is. Depression was never a thing for me. I was more of an angry person.
Yeah. That's a common theme, yeah.
And I learned to snap out of that. I stopped allowing myself to beat myself up for things that I did in the past, and like looking for things that might redeem those things and stuff like that, and stressing on that. I had to get through a lot of these things to be okay with myself.
So you wake up and it's gray and it's depressing and the politics and everything. You summarize that, and it's like a big fucking fat black cloud above your head, right? And you just do this. See, I'm thinking, obviously, I'm not in a handy mode, but you do this, and if you do it in the mirror, you see how ridiculous you look. But it makes you may even start laughing, how stupid you look doing that.
That brought me joy.
But guess what? For your brain, it makes no difference if you're faking your laughter or you're like sincerely laughing about something. When you're like, you do it like, if you fake it, if you make those gestures, those faces, your brain gets these positive signals.
The same chemical effect.
Yeah, and it immediately affects your brain.
Yeah.
And it just clicks something, you know what I mean? Super easy. Anyone can do it.
There are times when I do feel, let's say, that depression coming on. I recognize it immediately. So there are several paths I can take at this point. Do I want to wallow in it? Do I want to fight it? Why? What is the root of this? So what is bringing this on? Is it a time of the year? Is it someone's birthday? Have I not gotten enough sleep? So now you have this checklist that you can go through. So these tools that can help you in a lot of ways. So yes, so darkness, because I was born in that dark-minded world. And I did feel alone because everyone around me seemed to be just fine. So why am I the only one? Why do I feel this sadness? Why am I like this? Why am I, depressed and suicidal at like 6 years old, 7? That makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
But I learned at a young age that, your mind, some minds are wired that way. So you're just kind of born that way. And now you know that that's how it works. And now you can work around it and work with it.
And you can develop a lot further, I think, when you do have that early experience of darkness or a mental illness. Like I have a mental illness, and I think it's made me have to develop in so many ways, because you have to develop a heightened level of awareness and your impact on other people, and how to manage the internal rivers and the tides.
Once you exhaust drugs and alcohol, having fun and shit like that, you got to start meditating and trying all this other crap. Nothing else works anymore.
You need new solutions.
And one of them is, kind of accepting that everything is all, consciousness is a holistic unification of like our body and our mind.
I don't even think it should be separated. Like the mind-body separation that we've had as our sort of main medical headspace for the last few decades, it's becoming quite clear that it's not necessarily real. We're so connected. You know, we feel things in our gut. We have gut feelings. There's more serotonin in our gut than there is in our brains.
It's so weird. Hey,
Yeah.
it's cool.
So I think, like, you know, mental health is just health, and it's, you know, this kind of way that we're pitting it against, you know, physical health, and it's just we're one entity.
I think that the function of the music for me is always, and I'm more aware of it now at least, but it has always been a coping mechanism. I think when I was younger, overt displays of emotion were not something that I was either comfortable with or that was encouraged. So music and expression of emotional nature through your work is like a loophole. You could get away with it. And so it wasn't uncouth to be emotionally open in music. In fact, it was an attribute. So I found that so much of my processing, for better or for worse, got hardwired into my ability to make music, that if it helps people, it's because the function of it was to help me.
The stats for mental health and suicide in the trans community are really, really, really bad. Why do you think that is, and what can we do?
There's a lot of opposition, you know, and that feeds into a lot. There's not a lot of support for trans people coming out. You know, there's a lot of rejection from parents and from family and friends, and like I think it's people don't understand that when you come out or when you're questioning these things, like that is a really vulnerable time in your life, and you need people to support you through that. And like a lot of people just don't have that support, and so like you will go to like the only other option you can think of. Not everyone's willing to like fight that fight that you have to fight.
Yeah, I would highly recommend seeking therapy if you can. I know it can be an expense, but it's well worth that investment in my opinion, because without your mental health, you don't have anything else. So I just had to hit rock bottom really to realize that maybe this is worth looking into and trying. So when I did do it, I was, you know, it was a bit of a rocky road at first, but I found real value over a few sessions of doing it. And sometimes you have these things already within yourself and in your mind, but you need someone to help you pull it out.
This is an experience of the void.